years in the U.S. Army.
Flynn knew exactly how the system worked. He knew exactly what the intel world had been up to. He understood its funding. They had to get rid of Flynn.
President's former national security advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleading guilty today to lying to the FBI.
There was a moment where I just felt like I was drowning.
ISIS as the JV team. Do you feel as though your warnings were ignored?
We all knew that he was one of the most respected generals in the military, plain and simple.
Well, in 2012, he was appointed director of Defense Intelligence Agency. He ordered the first audit of the use of DIA's use of contractors. This set off alarm bells.
So I'm in there with these other political appointees. They're all supposed to go in there and tell what they believe to be the truth. What they did was they took my assessment and they wanted me to change it. And I was like, I'm not changing it.
Mike Flynn, whatever you think of him or his politics, did not lie, but instead told the truth. And so he was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
President Obama said, but I do have one specific recommendation. Stay away from Michael Flynn. He's bad news.
I went into the service because I love our country. And I come home and I find out that the worst enemy that I'm going to face in my life is right here in America.
Even had he not served this country, even if he were not a combat veteran, to turn something like this loose on a family, I mean, it's monstrous.
The media was out there in droves.
I went into a very deep depression, like suicidal depression. The only thing that kept me alive was my son.
We always knew that we somehow had to get through it because we knew he wasn't guilty.
Over time, instead of being pounded down below the surface of the ocean, we started to fight. I'm now above the surface. But I can see the shoreline. And I started to swim.
Wow. Hey, that intro brought so much memories of politics. Like in the last 10 years, I'm watching it and I'm just like, wow. Like, if I didn't already feel honored, I definitely feel more honored. I see that little collage was definitely an honor, bro. So welcome everybody to Legsit War Room. We have a special edition, and usually I know we always say that, but this to me is huge because this man that has joined us today has played a big part in paving the way for a lot of what I call it the newcomers when the Latino community is waking up right now. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the men that is leading that way, brother. And this and from Legsit, and I know Jess can say this as well. When we first joined this movement, being conservative Latinos, there are certain people that we look to as pillars and leaders because, we were learning this is all new to us when we came in 2015, 16, 17. And you're one of the men that have been a pillar and have stood strong. And we've looked at as guidance and as somebody that when you've come out and you've spoken, we said, you know what, this guy is the real deal. And we're honored that you would come on the show. I know all the guys at work were like, I go, guess who I'm going live with? They were like, who? And I'm like, General Flynn. They're like, yeah, no, really, who are you going live with? I was like, all right, you guys better watch tonight. So I know right now it's like, that's what you get. But brother, we appreciate you coming on. General Michael Flynn, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you, brother. This is awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me. And I really have such respect for what you guys represent. I mean, hey, folks. Yeah, first of all, thanks for showing that trailer. The movie is mind-blowing.
And we're going around the country right now on a 35-city nationwide tour. We've already hit 21 cities. We're getting ready to go to Charleston, West Virginia tomorrow. And then we basically we took a break today because we had to get our brakes fixed on one of our trucks. So, because we're driving, this is all on the road. And so we're going from West Virginia up into Pennsylvania, then New York, up into Connecticut. And then we go back down to New York City. We're going to do 2 showings on Mother's Day in a place called Ronkonkoma and at the America First warehouse. And we're going to go down to Delaware and I'm going to show it in Joe Biden's backyard. And yeah, nice. seriously, Newark, Delaware. And then we drive out west again and we'll finish up in Texas down there in Dallas. We have two in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then we're going to be in Spring, Texas, just outside Houston. So, the movie itself, the timing of it was really important to me because I knew with everything going on after the 2020 election sort of unfolded the way it did, and there's no way in the world, and I say this jokingly when I speak to audiences and stuff, and I always ask, do you ever see anybody wearing a Build Back Better baseball hat? No, you don't. You see a lot of people, where you guys got great hats here, but you see a lot of mega people, right? I mean, the whole thing about, a guy that can fill a cornfield with 50,000 people, versus a guy that can't field a, 8 or 10 people in somebody's backyard. So, we got a man that cannot climb 3 sets of stairs or finish a complete sentence. And yet, we're involved in a war in Europe. We're involved in a war in the Middle East. We got a war on the southern border. We got a war of drugs. We got a war on our children. I mean, all this shit that's going on. And so I wanted to do this movie. This movie is actually a lifetime for me because, it sort of wraps into a couple of hours, my family, and people are going to meet my family. And that's a big part of this story because it's how really it's a story of survival and how a family came together. So you guys will understand and your audience will understand. I got 9 brothers and sisters. My wife has 7. And my family on my side, we're Irish, right? Irish are tough people. And my father was a tough guy, World War II and a Korea vet. Both my grandfathers served in World War I. One of them served in World War I and World War II. I still have a brother who's serving. My youngest son, is still serving, and he served 3 tours in Afghanistan. One of those was while I was there. So I mean, people don't know, and these animals, and I call them animals. These animals in our government and in the Department of Justice, and we saw some good news today out of Miami with the classified documents case for Trump. But we tell a story in this movie that, and I'll tell like a little bit about what my sister Mary talks about, because people will meet my family and they'll see how when a family comes together, then, and fights back against these animals and figures out a way to defeat them, which is what we did, then the American people can pull together and the communities can pull together. We're going to need to pull together because this nation, I say it's at grave risk right now to this Marxist takeover. And I ain't kidding. I mean, I'm not somebody who's just, reading it on the internet, right? I mean, I've spent my entire life in service to this nation. Hell, I was born on an army base years ago. My father, I talk about my parents a lot because they were good people. My father was a retired sergeant from the army, and we grew up in a, like I said, we grew up in a tough Irish family, but we learned how to take care of each other, right? We would fight like the Dickens inside of our home. I mean, we'd try to kill each other in battles that we would have, fighting each other for a pair of shoes or something. But when you took us on outside the door, you messed with the wrong family. And we had to, the level that I got to, which was really the most senior military intelligence officer in the Department of Defense. And then subsequently, I became the National Security Advisor for Trump. I tell that story in this film. And And it's a really powerful story because Obama is the one that chose me for the really critical jobs in the military, which a lot of people don't know that, right? And then at the very end, I talk about, I show a letter to my son Michael, who you just saw in that movie, in that clip there. Michael went through some very, very difficult times, and there's a mental health story here that we talk about as a family in a very, very intimate way. My brothers and sisters, my wife and I, and my son. And we talk about this idea of mental health because mental health affects a lot of people, and it affected us. So I'm a retired general, national security advisor, worked for Trump at all these high levels, but we're still human and we're still a family, and we still have all the difficulties that everybody has. And I also talk about in the film the abuse and the weaponization of the Department of Just Us, right? Or injustice, if you want to call it that. And, most of the people that they abuse, most of the people that it's weaponized against are minority communities, except in the last probably 8 years, last 8 to 10 years, let's say. So over the last decade, they have really started coming after these political targets, right? Like me, like Trump. And there are others. There's a few others. Rudy Giuliani's another one. My former lawyer, Sidney Powell's another one. I mean, there's a bunch. There's probably a dozen or so that they've come after. I mean, I'll say it on your show because I said it on the stage the other night when we were in one of the film showings in one of the cities we were at. I just got 8 more subpoenas. 8. Okay? 8. My son received the same 8 at his door. My brother. I mean, these people are, like I say, they are animals. And I have no problems calling them out. And at this point in time, for us as Americans, and I don't care whether you're Democrat, Republican, I don't care whether you're purple with pink polka dots. If you love this country, I will stand up and fight for you. And we all need to come together here, because communism is not something that we want in this country, although it's coming, and to a degree it's here. And it's enabled by people in our government, socialists that have been in our government for a long time. They love the Chinese Communist Party for some reason. They love the Chinese. You don't hear them bitching about the Chinese at all.
Oh, wow. Cut off.
Oh, shoot, we just lost him.
I'm
There
here.
he
There
is.
you go. There he
I'm
is.
here.
There you are.
I'm here.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry.
Call me this as soon as you mention China, brother.
Yeah,
As soon as
exactly.
you said communist.
God dang, they're right. It's like bap, 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 bap. I mean, these people are, I'm serious, So, you got to have a boogeyman in order to have the money flow. Okay.
Right.
And the boogeyman in this case is over there. And that money flow, like we've seen. So, and I just tell this story because I've said it over the last couple of days. As we have driven around this country, the road infrastructure, and we got an RV, we got a truck with some gear that we pulling on we're towing a big trailer, and we got 2 SUVs for luggage and security, right? So we got a 4-vehicle convoy, and in 2 of our vehicles today, we've been on the road for probably a little over a month, and 2 of the vehicles that we have to fix our chassis and our undercarriages and our brake lines. It's unbelievable. The road infrastructure in the United States of America sucks. And I mean, it is bad. And I'm talking federal highways, state highways, and you name the state. I think we've been in almost 35 states so far. And, and I'm one of these guys that pays attention to everything. The movies, back to the movie's great, but I'm looking at where we're going, and we're going to a lot of small towns and cities. We went to a couple of big cities. We went to Las Vegas. We went up to Milwaukee. We went to just outside of Nashville. But every other place is like Charleston tomorrow night, Bow, Washington. We had 550 people in Bow, Washington, Meridian, Idaho. So we're going to places where a lot of the big muckety mucks, a lot of the political people don't go. And what I'm telling people is that you still matter. Everybody matters. That don't give up, and that you're not alone, right? So what I'm telling your audience, guys, you guys got a great audience, and I know you got a growing and emerging audience that is very powerful. And I will tell you, if the community, the community that you guys represent, if they, and I know this because I mean, you don't serve in the military. Hell, when I served in the 82nd Airborne Division, my first platoon sergeant was from Oxnard, California. A great guy, Mexican guy, wonderful, tough.
That's close, yeah.
Tough guy, yeah. Zamora was his name. A great guy. He might be listening. Another guy by the name of Sanchez, Ernesto Sanchez. He was another platoon sergeant of mine. Both of them made it to sergeant major. And Ernie was from Havana, and Ernie grew up in the United States, but his parents with him as a child escaped from the communist regime down there. And I stay in touch with both these guys, and they're just great patriots. But I grew up around initially in the military. We were going in and out of. In fact, I was talking with some friends today about the president in El Salvador, who I have a lot of respect for. He basically pulled in his whole cabinet the other day, and he told them, "I'm putting you all on notice that you're under investigation," because he knows that there are a bunch of them are crooks. We're going to do a skit. Okay, one of the things we're going to do probably at our next break, we're going to do a skit to showcase Milei, right? President Milei out of Argentina, where he says, and I'll screw it up, but he says, "Ta fuera, ta fuera." He starts ripping, ripping the cabinets right off the board, right? I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that because I want people, because people ask me all the time, if you go back into the government, or if you had your shot at doing something, what would you do? What would you, what parts of the government would you change? Well, I'd say a lot, and that's one of the reasons why they had to go after me, because people ask me all the time, like, why the hell were they so, why were they so adamant to get you the hell out of there? Well, they were because, amongst everybody that Trump had around him, and in the movie, I talk specifically to this, and I also talk about the night that I left, and the inner circle around Trump, that people that understand the Bible, there's a person in the Bible called Judas, and man, did he have he had a crop of those types around him, but it also was. It was clearly the Obama administration too, and Obama himself. And I talk about that in the movie. And I think people are, when they hear me talk about that, I think people are very, I don't want to give away too much. They're very surprised at what I disclose. There are things in this film, and I've been on a lot of podcasts, and I've written a lot. I've written a bunch of books and written a whole bunch of articles to fight back against this tyranny that's taken over our country. But I disclose things in the movie that I've never talked about at all. And one of them is going back to, what we dealt with in our family when it came to some mental health issues that actually did drive some of the decisions that we had to take, that my wife and I had to take. And I'll stop in a second, but throw it back to you guys if you got any questions. But I also want people to understand that my wife and I, we've been together since we were 13 years old. We've been together over 50 years, and been married. I don't remember how. I mean, my anniversary's coming up, so I better damn sure remember how many years I've been married. probably 40, yeah, 44. I'm not home right now, so I talked to her earlier today. She said, "Get your ass home."
She'll say, "Keep on you forget, keep on traveling, keep it moving."
Yeah. Right. But anyway, there's so much at stake,
right?
And this is not I love a good sense of humor. I have a good sense of humor, and I love to kid and bust chops, but and I do that, and I still do that because I just think that we need to lighten it up every so often, because otherwise it's exhausting. But we are in a period of history, U.S. history right now, where it's either do or die moment. And I want to be around people who are doers. I want to be around people who are action oriented, focused on the mission. Check your egos at the door, folks. No time to worry about your machismo. Now's the time. Now's the time to worry about your families. And final thing about the movie. One of the questions that you do get in the movie, or you take away from watching the movie, is, what are you willing to fight for? And I address that specifically. I address that head on in the movie. And I think that message is what is resonating with so many people that have seen the movie now, because it's like, holy crap, man. You know, Flynn was willing to do this in order to accept that, right? And again, I don't want to. I want people to go see this movie because it's a remarkable story of survival, but it's a very inspiring story to get people to do more than they've ever even considered doing in their lives. Believe me, people can do so much more, and now's the time to do it. No more complaining, no more sitting around, whining, but now's the time.
Amen, bro. Great, such a blessing to have you on. It's an honor, and we're super excited to see the movie. We're trying to get a showing of it to come out here in LA, so we'll all be right there, and we'll be promoting. And we're super excited. We thank you for all you've done for the country. Question I wanted to ask you is, what gave you the momentum to continue the fight against the deep state, while most would have given up, but yet you continue to fight?
Yeah, three things. My faith in God. And I found, or I guess a better way to say it is, I renewed my faith in God through my family, and that's really the second real reason is my family. I guess they're one and the same in this case, and my family's a very, very strong family, and I'm not just talking about my wife and my kids and my grandkids, who's my sort of intimate inner circle family. I'm talking about all my brothers and sisters. My wife has 7 brothers and sisters. I got 9. We have close to 100 nieces and nephews and cousins. I mean, the Latino community thinks they got a lot of people hanging around in their homes. Believe me, you don't know what you're talking about when you get with the Irish clan of the Flynns. We're like Flynn. The name Flynn is like Smith in this country. It's a shitload of us all over the place. So anyway. And then the third thing, which I talk about specifically in the movie, is the American people. And it's really about, I describe it as true friendship. When you're in a tough spot, a really tough spot, you're going to find out who your friends are. Okay. Right. You will find out, believe me, you will find out who your friends are. And, it's interesting for me, a lot of the rank and file that I serve with in the military, rank and file meaning like the sergeants, the sergeants majors, the lieutenants, majors, captains, they all were just so in my camp, in my corner, right? But a lot of the senior guys, the generals and admirals, crickets, right? They said nothing. Because they didn't want to affect their little cushy jobs that they had, with some government contract. And I'm serious. So they said nothing. And in fact, to this day. But that's why I always believed in, the rank and file, because guys that were like served with me and knew me, and they were like, hey, I'm with you, whatever, you need anything, let me know. They came to me. But the other thing that came to me was the American people, and many of them are meeting around the country right now. They're coming to these events, and I get into the habit of writing letters to a lot of people that sent us. They sent us letters. I received, I think, 150,000 letters, and I've kept them all. I have every single one of them. I put them in these Rubbermaid bins that you can get at, Home Depot for a few bucks. I've kept every single one, and I wrote responses to every single person. And part of what I did was, and this drove the movie, was I wrote a book in a very, very easy book to read. It's probably 60, 70 pages long, very thin book. And it's actually called A Letter to America. And it's what it is, it's a love letter. It's a love letter to the American people. And in that book, I talk about like what you saw in the movie, or in that trailer you saw, where I was using water as a metaphor of drowning, right? I felt like I was drowning. And I did. I felt like I was drowning. And what the American people did was the American people came to me and started buddy breathing for me. So it's like, they're breathing air back into my lungs by helping my family and I with the financial burden that we were experiencing, and really the mental anguish that we were experiencing, because what they started to send me, which blew my wife and I away, they would send us letters describing their problems and what they were experiencing or what they had experienced. And they were telling me in their way, what they did to get through it. I mean, it was just powerful, powerful letters. And that's why, when I started getting them, and we talk about this in the movie, I was hanging on to them. I was keeping them. And I would read them every so often in the first like 2 or 3 months of going through this madness. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to write these people back. And I did. And my wife tells a funny story about how we used to go to the dollar store, because I'm a big fan of the dollar store. And my wife says it ain't the dollar store no more. It's $1.25, right?
Well, they shut a bunch of them down over here in California.
Yeah, exactly. And my other favorite store is Big Lots. If you ever been, I don't know if there's Big Lots out there, but Big Lots, because they got good sales. But so I started writing these letters back, and I just I couldn't believe the response, and I'm still amazed at it. But true friends, and the American people became true friends of my family and I, because they came to us in a time of incredible need, and they stuck with us. And to a degree, this film is driven by that book, A Letter to America. And this tour that I'm on, this 35 city tour, is really a big thank you tour. It's a big thank you tour. The movie's great. It actually great feedback, and we appreciate everybody that's out there, buying it and coming to these shows. But really the thank you to the American people and those that are responding. I don't know what to say. I mean, we're humbled as a family. We are not going to give up. They picked the wrong family. They definitely picked the wrong family. We just had to figure out a way to navigate, and we did. And here we are again. They're after us again. They'll continue to come after me. And there's haters and, bots and everything on the internet and all that kind of stuff. But, my mom used to say, sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt you. So, I could care less. Now, somebody comes after me with a stick, then it's a different issue, right? And that's why I gotta have security with me these days. It's crazy because these haters that are out there, they spew all this craziness, and what they do, they may not be the person, but there's always some psychopath that listens to them that believes they're nonsense.
Right.
And you're walking out of a show, you're walking out of a building, you're walking out of a church, and next thing you know, somebody walks up to you and they try something, and it hasn't happened all that much, but it has happened, and you deal with it when you're there. I appreciate the fact of my military service, although I'm older than I used to be. I still am not going to take anybody's shit.
Right.
Excuse me.
Yeah, but yet you never see them get investigated like we see what's going on in these colleges. Like, where's the money? Because they said that Soros and Biden and them are funding these protests. And all. Why ain't you guys going after the money? Why is you investigating all what they're doing? They're terrorizing college campuses, vandalizing, assaulting people, and yet where's the investigations at? But go ahead, A-Rod.
Yeah, no, 100%. When you were talking about being attacked, it takes me back. And a lot of people, I know you guys, I don't know if you guys he was giving the backstory. I remember that Democrats and Republicans wanted you in. I remember that 100%. It was 100%. Everybody was. And I remember when Obama and Clapper started coming at you with so much hate. And I just to myself, I was thinking, why are they hating him so much when this was a bipartisan thing for you? What were you feeling at that time? I always wanted to ask you this question because I thought to myself at that time, you got a lot of heat. I mean, just as much as you're getting now, but you were in the thick of it right there. Was it you just put your foot down, or what was it?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what I felt. I felt a lot of betrayal, and boy, it's for real. And and I will tell you that in the film, I talk about specifically when they made the decision to come after me. There's a specific date. There's a specific date and a specific meeting that I talk about in the film. And the other thing that they did was, and this is how the media and the intelligence community, principally the CIA, in fact, specifically the CIA and the media and their cohorts in the media, as well as in this case, the previous administration, the Obama administration, how they colluded to target me specifically to get me out of the Trump orbit. Now they did work with people. They did work with people inside the White House, and I do talk to that. And I'll leave it there. I'll just tease that there. But they work with people inside the White House, inside the Trump White House. So now, one of the things that I don't think people realize, but I was the most Googled name in the world 2 years in a row. And like the third and fourth year, I was like, in the top 5 Googled name. So if you Googled my name, what they did was they then sent you, you type in General Flynn. What the algorithms did was they sent you immediately to something that they wanted to define me as, right? So and that's how it works. So they would send to convicted, felon, traitor, committed treason. Those would be the words 2 years in a row. They made sure that happened, okay? And that's how it works. That's how and I call it, and I talk about this in the movie. I talk about assassinations in the movie, and we specifically discuss reassessing the assassinations of the 60s of John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. We have to we need as a nation to reassess those assassinations that were physical assassinations. Actually, a bullet to the head, right? Or physically killing somebody by elements of our government. So if they're willing to do that, then what is it that they're willing to do now? And the big difference now, and we speak to this, is this idea of assassinating by narrative, right? So they take a narrative, they create a narrative, and they say this is the narrative that they call it the mockingbird media, right? They create this narrative, and then they stick to that narrative about, in this case, General Mike Flynn, traitor, committed treason, convicted felon, and none of those were true. But that's what they did, and they did it for years. So there's a part of the population that just believes that, right? I mean, and there's some other things that we talk about in the movie, and so it's interesting because when they did that, they actually made me. Initially they thought they were making me an enemy of the state, and this gets back to the American people, right? The American people. The one thing about the American people. Americans are just basically common sense oriented, very simple. Right. Explain it to me in simple language. Don't get all, Harvard on me or all whatever, Ivy League on me. Just tell me in simple language what's going on. And when they began to look at me, and they were going, wait a second, this guy was touted as one of the top intel officers of his generation. He's fighting the war on terror. He's got all these accolades. I mean, all these different things, and he's a general, right? And he's hired by Obama, he's hired by Trump, and you kind of go, wait a second, how can he be what they say? A Russian spy, right? That was the other word. That was the other one. All these things. So that's what they did, and it's like what they're doing to Trump right now. It's like what they're doing to him not just right now, but they've been doing to him for 8 years, right? More than 8 years. So they do that. And they do it to the detriment of themselves, because this is why the American people are so sick and tired of the corporate. I call it the corporate media, not the mainstream media anymore. It's not the mainstream media. You guys are mainstream now. The people of this country are finding these great influencers in this new form of media. I call it citizen journalism or digital soldiers. But this new form of journalism that we have now, right? You guys are the mainstream. You and many others that represent, this type of format and this type of medium. The corporate media is bought and paid for, and they are in direct collusion with these communists that have taken over our federal government. And I mean that. I'm not kidding. I'm using that word very precisely. Communists, and they are, and they're in some cases there's some that are really, really hardcore. And they run the gamut of many of the institutions in the United States of America. But the big institution that they're in is the Department of Education. I mean, our public school system in this country is terrible. It sucks. It's one of the worst in the world. We spend the most money, but it's one of the worst in the world. but a lot of families don't have a choice because you got moms and dads who are working, they're working a couple of jobs. A lot of families are broken families, so moms are out there working. They got a couple of kids. They got to take them off to school. So they're sort of stuck in this rot that exists in our public school education system. And that's why I'm a huge, huge proponent of homeschooling and finding out ways to get communities out there to come together, find people who are like retired teachers, right, who want to come back and help a community out and create homeschooling programs. One of the things that I would love to see in a future government is I'd love to see, and they've talked about this, but this would be easy to do. A president of the United States, in this case Trump, could do it. He gets back in. He can give a voucher to these people that want to homeschool and tell them, what, stop paying this element of tax, right? I don't want people to pay school taxes if they ain't sending their kids to the schools. That's a ripoff. So we've got to get smarter. These are common sense things. Instead of just pouring our money out of our paychecks and giving it to things that are broken, right? You don't buy a car or a home or a grill or whatever the hell you're going to buy, and then it's a piece of crap. But you take it back or you fix it, right? You make it better. I mean, what we do in government is we buy into something and we destroy it, and then we just keep putting money into it, and it's just good money after bad. And frankly, like what we're seeing right now is we're seeing the folks in Washington, D.C., they're pouring money overseas. They're not pouring money into the problems that we're having here in this country. I just talked about the infrastructure. I mean, how can they spend $100 billion overseas, right? In this is just in Ukraine, which is a crime spree. The country of Ukraine, the people of Ukraine, I've met a bunch. They're good people, actually. The government is like a public crime spree. It's everything from weapons laundering, money laundering, drug smuggling, human trafficking. I mean, you name it. It is a place where all kinds of problems exist, and I'm talking about international problems. And we just give them another $100 billion. Nothing to see here. So, and you guys know, I don't know if you're both out in the LA area. We were just out in California. We did two events, one up in Yuba City up in the north, and we did another one in just outside of Santa Barbara. And, as soon as we crossed the border, we had to stop and get gas, right? $6.10. I mean, $6.10. Gas, right?
Yeah.
I just came from LA yesterday or Sunday. Came from Chino because I live in Bakersfield, but I went from Chino all the way to Bakersfield, and the gas is crazy. And you ain't got to tell me I work for the city here in Bakersfield. I work on the roads, and believe me, you look at the roads and you're like, this is ridiculous. After a while, it is.
Well, I love what you were saying, General. I love what you're saying. That's why I wanted to ask you: would you ever serve again, or would you ever try to run for office?
Yeah, I mean, I would serve. I feel like I'm serving, like you guys are serving right now, right? People that are listening to your great show. That's a good question for everybody. How are you serving now? Not what you did in the past. I want to know right now, how are you serving your communities, your families, and this country? So, I mean, my answer is yeah. I would seriously consider it again. I've been through that process, and I know what that means. I've served my whole life. I actually don't know anything but service really to country. But this time around, I think the condition for me would be about people. And I think if I was ever asked to do something, or if I was asked to consider what would you want to do, part of what I would want to do, and probably a big part, would be to help make sure that we get the right people in the right places. And frankly, there's a lot of people that we don't need to put a lot of people back into government. All these appointees and all these sycophants that these clingers, these hangers on around government. And there's a lot of severe, I use the word severe, reform that must happen in our government. I just mentioned the Department of Education. I'd close that. I'd shut that down. I mean, close it. Like literally, tell the janitors and the secretaries, thank you for your service. Give them some type of, and thank them. I mean, the rest of the upper echelon bureaucrats have ruined our education system.
Right.
But you thank those people. You give them a stipend. Maybe you give them like a 90-day stipend, and you say, I'm sorry, but we're closing the Department of Education. Go find a job somewhere else. And everybody goes, oh my God! But no, believe me, they'll be fine, and they'll find something. There's plenty of work. Hell, I'm in West Virginia right now. There's job help wanted signs all over the place. And there's other places that need severe reform. The intelligence community, the entire intelligence community, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, elements of the Department of Defense, mainly the civilian segments of the Department of Defense. I mean, it's insane how many generals, and we've got I think we've got 40 something, I think it's 44, 45 4-stars in admirals and generals in the Department of Defense. At the end of World War II, when we had our largest military and we just kicked the crap out of the Japanese imperialists and the Nazi socialists, we had seven 4-stars, right? I mean, it tells you everything you need to know. Talk about it's a pyramid. You're supposed to have a lot of privates at the bottom and very few, kings at the top, or very few generals at the top. What we've done is we flipped the whole thing. Oh, we got all these people at the upper echelon, and we don't have enough fighters at the bottom. Believe me, what we call foxhole strength in the military. Foxhole strength in the military means do you have enough infantrymen in your infantry companies and in your infantry, in your fighting formations, right? In your battalions, in your companies, in your platoons. What is your foxhole strength? And when your foxhole strength is like 50%, that means you're not ready for war. You're not ready to fight. Your foxhole strength should be, at least 80, maybe 85%. You're doing really good if you got 85%. It damn sure really should be 100%, especially if, given the conditions of the world today. I mean, we're at risk. And I can tell you our foxhole strength is down probably 50, 60%. That's terrible.
Ooh.
And I'm highballing it. We will not meet this coming year in this September. We're not going to meet our recruiting numbers.
Biden made the military go woke.
Yeah,
it's
and
ridiculous.
you know what they're going to do. So to your, because I know a lot about this in your community, right? The Hispanic community, the Latino community, they're going to come into your community. Okay, they're going to come into your community. We do this. I've seen this. They're going to come into your community in places like New York and places like Phoenix. Those are two of the big recruiting areas for the Hispanic community. And they're going to come into that community. They're going to go, hey, they're going to offer you all kinds of incentives. And it kills me to say, don't go into the service. It kills me to say that. But right now, until we see a change in the behavior of the leadership at the top, and I'm talking about, the forced acceptance of critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusivity, or this nonsense of social emotional learning. Trust me, there are no safe spaces on a battlefield. War is not fair. And I can tell you, I've served with many great people in my career on the battlefield and in garrison and in peacetime. And what we should not do is we should not abuse the demographics of our nation just to make a number, just to get to a number. We should not do that. And what we should do is we need to rebuild the trust in the people of this country, and frankly, the trust in moms and dads, mainly moms. Most of the time, I could go on and on about stories I used to have because I would make decisions about guys' lives as a company commander. I used to, a kid would come into me for a uniform code of military justice, right? For for some type of military justice, everybody would recommend, you got to take this guy's rank or you got to take some pay from him. And there was no way in the world I was going to do that. In fact, that was a point of pride for me as a company commander. I think I had one Article 15 where I reduced a guy in rank, one out of a company that had about 400 people. And what I used to do, I used to call the moms up. And I'd say, hey, I got your son A-Rod coming in, all right? He's going to be, I'm serious. I would do this. I'd call the mom up and I would go through this drill and I would say to the kid, I have him at attention in front of my desk. I was just a young officer. And I would say, are your mom and dad still alive? And the answer, because these are young kids, they would say yes. I'd say, are they still together? Typically the answer was no. It was no, they're not together. And I would say, okay, well, so which one do you speak to most of the time? Well, I mean, like 95% of the time was the mom. And I say, oh, your mom. When was the last time you talked to her? Well, it's been a while. And I got this kid in there to potentially bust him in rank, right? And I'd say, okay, well, let me tell you something. I got your mom on the phone, and I want you to talk to her. And I'd hand him the phone. I'd hand him the phone right there in my office. And man, you would see these guys melt.
Sweat, right?
You'd see these guys melt. Some of them would break down in tears. I could hear moms on the phone yelling at them, and then I'd get the phone back, and when they're done, I'd take the phone. I'd say to their mom, I'd say, yeah, thank you very much, and I'll take it from here. And I'd hang up, and I'd talk to the kid, and the kid would go, yes, sir, I got what I understand what you're saying.
Right.
And I would say, you got it. Now you understand, right? You understand. You got to, if you're gonna do stupid stuff, keep in mind, is this something that your mom would be proud of? And the answer was always no. My mom wouldn't be proud of it. And I said, yeah, that's right. She's not proud that I had to call her up and get you on the phone to get you involved in your life. But you're lucky. You're lucky there, buddy. Young kid, right? Say 18-year-old kids, right? So this is leadership, and this is how. Even at the highest levels of our government, we have got to be smart and benevolent. And benevolent is a big word, but we got to be benevolent about how we deal out and how we meter out justice. But we are going to have to hold people accountable. If the American people want anything right now, they're demanding it, is that these people that are out there just ruining the lives of people for political motives, they are going to have to be held accountable. We can't get past this. We can't get past this unless they are. We don't have a free or an equal and fair justice system where there's one set of rules for all of us instead of a set of rules for me and a set of rules for them. Right. We cannot have that. And I'll finish with this, guys, because our founders in this country taught us two things. All the original signees of the document, right? And really, really fascinating history. But what they taught us was two things, and one of it was courage. They all stood their ground. They all stood courageously to decide that we're going to sign up for this experiment, right? I call it an experiment. And I talk about this in the movie a little bit. One of my brothers does on my behalf. And I call it an experiment because this is an experiment. It's a constitutional republic. It's a beautiful country. But they taught us about courage because they stood their ground and they demonstrated courage. The second thing that they taught us, and that we tend to forget, this is the part that we've forgotten, is they taught us how to be accountable. And they were accountable to themselves. And they said that I'm going to hold myself to account for my actions, my decisions, and what I will be willing to do and give in order to make this thing work. Okay, this thing called the United States of America, fighting and standing alongside each other and standing up to, at the time, the strongest, the most powerful nation on the planet, the most powerful Navy, the most powerful Army on the planet. And they did it, because they said to each other, we're going to hold each other accountable and we're going to do this together. And we will go down with the ship with each other, or we will ride the waves all the way to establishing a beautiful country, which is what we still have today. But we will only maintain that. We'll only maintain that if we as communities stick together. And it doesn't mean that I got to like you every day of the week, but it means that when I look around and I look for, in a time of crisis, right? Thomas Paine, right? No summer soldiers. In a time of crisis, which is what we are in right now, the American people will typically rise to that crisis and defend our nation. And it's like, I tell people, we don't go overseas and fight our enemies because we hate them. We go overseas because we love our country. We love our families. Right. We love our communities. Man. That's why we fight. And so that's sort of me in a nutshell.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. I appreciate you for coming on. And to close, so our Latino community, we have a tight-knit community. You talked about it. It's just like the Irish. I'm married to a half Irish woman. So believe me, I understand. I try to push some buttons and I'm like, oh, you're spicy. So believe me, I get it. I'm like, her family's not the ones I want to mess with. So I get all that. So what can we in the Latino community, because we're always trying to educate them. That's our biggest thing, is trying to educate them and let them make an educated decision. And we don't try to pressure nobody, because at the end of the day, they be like, oh, you guys forced us. So what can we do to get this message, this movie out? How can we help you?
Yeah, well, first of all, on the movie, for the DVD side, we did a subtitling in Hispanic, and
Nice.
so it's subtitled in Hispanic. I am trying to figure out a way to do we can use. We've demonstrated, some guys have demonstrated to me about artificial intelligence to be able to have the language actually spoken in Hispanic, which is something I'm going to try to get done here pretty quickly. So, but that's a sidebar to your question. The real thing is I want this big growing emerging community. I mean, this is a big community. It's like 30% of our country, right? Mm-hmm. And what I want people to understand is, look, the strength of the Hispanic community is really a couple of things. It's family, for sure. I mean, family is tight. It is tight. And so stand up for your families. The second thing is, I think, is faith, and I'm a Catholic. I'm a Catholic kid. And, I grew up as a very traditional Catholic, Irish Catholic, right? I mean, and hell, I used to work as school that I went to, I was an altar boy for a while. I mean, I used to work in churches. Even when I was in the military, I'd still volunteer to help out in churches and stuff, because they always needed volunteers. But I want your community to understand that, look, you got to get involved in your communities. I use this phrase, local action equals a national impact. But I want you guys to think about it like this. I want you to choose common sense, right, over all the people that are going to try to fool you with all of the big language, right? And I mean, even people that are running for office that are Hispanic, you've got to kind of take a hard look at them. Are they pro America, or are they pro money, right? I mean, so be careful, be cautious. I want this community, this very strong community in this country, I want them to be pro-America. I believe they are. I believe in deep down in their hearts they are. And so you've got to look for the leaders. Don't vote for politicians anymore. Stop voting for politicians. We, as all Americans, have been voting for politicians for 50 years, and it hasn't worked. In fact, it's destroyed this country. We now have to find leaders. We've got to find leaders in our communities. We've got to encourage leaders in our communities to run for office. Men and women, and there's some good ones that are in the various, that are in right now. There's not as many as I'd like, but there's a few that are in various, in Congress and some places. But stop going for these politicians that are doing nothing and only coming back and want your money or your vote. Go for leaders who are willing to fight for this country, willing to fight for your communities, willing to fight for your family and your families, plural, because this community is going to continue to grow. We are going to see eventually, where like we saw in like a Barack Obama, who really is I mean, talk about a socialist, talk about a guy who masked himself very well. I mean, very well, but we're going to see in this country eventually, a president of the United States who is a Latino. I mean, we're going to see that, guaranteed that. And so what is it that we seek in somebody like going to that level? Well, it's the same thing you would want in your local school board. You'd want that kind of leadership. You want that leadership that's strong, that's faith-based, that stands for principles and doesn't care what people say, doesn't care what they say in the newspapers about them, because the newspapers are owned by Soros. The newspapers are owned by the left. The media is owned by the left. Stand your ground. Don't let the name calling stop you. Don't let your pride get in the way of your mission. The mission is to protect our families, protect our communities, protect our country, and save it from the likes of this communist takeover, because it's a very, very real thing. So that's my kind of counsel to you guys and to your great audience. And I know you got a great audience, and it's and I want people to take it seriously. Believe me or not, what I tell you when I say something, I absolutely believe what I say. And I have a lot of experience that drives me to the type of analysis and the type of thinking that I use. You know, I didn't get to where I got to because somebody sprinkled fairy dust on me and, you know, poof, you're a general. You work your ass off to get to that level. But I still have never forgotten the roots of where I came from. And that's sort of my last statement to your audience is don't ever forget where you come from. Once you forget where you come from, you'll never get back there.
Amen. Thank you so much, General. It was an honor having you on. And make sure everybody goes out and sees this movie. Go to FlynnMovie.com.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell them how they can find you.
Go to FlynnMovie.com. And on there, you can stream it now. You can stream it off of FlynnMovie.com. There's about 4 or 5 things. I think it's around $5 or $6. And then, and if we still have, I think, 13 cities to go. We got a couple up in the New York area. So on that website, FlynnMovie.com, there's a list of the remaining cities for our tour. And and come there. It's an entire event. We show up at 5. Doors open at 5. I stay till midnight. I stay till midnight every time because I'll stand there and I'll take photos. I'll sign autographs. I'll do all that kind of stuff. And they also will watch the movie. So join us either there or just stream it, which is, you know, just as easy to do that at home.
All right. Thank you so much, General. Go ahead. Close it up.
No, thank you. I'm watching it tonight. I don't care how late we stay up. I'm watching it. Taking my kids to jiu-jitsu. Then we're coming back and watching it.
I love it. Well, thank you guys for everything that you do, and thank you to your audience. And never give up on this country. And know that there's a lot of people out there that are shoulder to shoulder with us. And I just know the American spirit will never relent. We'll never give up.
Hey man, you're a great motivator, man. You pumped me up. You gave me the strength to keep on, because sometimes it's rough, man, especially because all the censorship and the attacks from the left and all that. But you know, it's a good motivator. I like what you said about the influencers, soldiers. How did you say it again?
Say that digital soldiers. Oh,
digital soldiers.
Digital
That's
soldiers.
what I like.
Digital soldiers.
I'm a digital soldier.
Exactly. That's what we are. We're digital soldiers. And then we call them citizen journalists, but digital soldiers, man. This is a fight. This is a fight for right here. The cognitive battle space. Cognitive battle space. Right here. Get it? We got to get the message into the minds of especially these young kids.
Right.
Amen. Amen, brother. 100%. All right, everybody.
God bless.
Take
care, you guys.
See you later. Peace.
Considered highly skilled when it comes to intelligence gathering.
33 years in the U.S. Army.
Flynn knew exactly how the system worked. He knew exactly what the intel world had been up to. He understood its funding. They had to get rid of Flynn.
President's former national security advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleading guilty today to lying to the FBI.
There was a moment where I just felt like I was drowning.
ISIS as the JV team. Do you feel as though your warnings were ignored?
We all knew that he was one of the most respected generals in the military, plain and simple.
Well, in 2012, he was appointed director of Defense Intelligence Agency. He ordered the first audit of the use of DIA's use of contractors. This set off alarm bells.
And so I'm in there with these other political appointees. They're all supposed to go in there and tell what they believe to be the truth. What they did was they took my assessment and they wanted me to change it. And I was like, I'm not changing it.
Mike Flynn, whatever you think of him or his politics, did not lie, but instead told the truth. And so he was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
President Obama said, but I do have one specific recommendation. Stay away from Michael Flynn. He's bad news.
I went into the service because I love our country. And I come home and I find out that the worst enemy that I'm going to face in my life is right here in America.
Even had he not served this country, even if he were not a combat veteran, to turn something like this loose on a family, I mean, it's monstrous.
The media was out there in droves.
I went into a very deep depression, like suicidal depression. The only thing that kept me alive was my son.
We always knew that we somehow had to get through it because we knew he wasn't guilty.
Over time, instead of being pounded down below the surface of the ocean, we started to fight. I'm now above the surface. But I can see the shoreline. And I started to swim for it.